Are you a beginner to core training? If you are, how do you go from a beginner level up to an advanced level? Well, number one, it comes down to understanding how the core is built and then selecting exercises depending on that build and that design. And that's what we're going to look at in this tutorial. So we're going to cover how the core is built, then we're going to look at some exercises that go against that build and that design, and then we're going to look at some exercises that work for that build and design. And that's how we're going to go from that beginner level up to the advanced level. First of all, we're going to look at what the core is and how it's designed. So we're going to break this up into 4 parts. Number one is we have to understand the core as one unit. So we've got rectus abdominis on the front, we've got obliques on the side, we've got spinal rectus on the back, we've got transverse abdominis deeper, we've got QL, which is deeper as well, and we've got some deeper spinal erectors as well. So we've got a collection of muscles, but we have to view this, or have to view them, as one unit known as the core. Number two, it's made up of muscles, tendons and fascia. So we've mentioned the muscles, but we've also, that intertwine and create the 3 layers, we have the tendons and we have the fascia that go with it. So what that basically does is that creates the 3 layers and the one unit that it becomes. So it's not one unit and then another unit and then another unit, or one layer, another layer and then another layer. These layers, these 3 layers are intertwined with each other. So where they are 3 distinct layers, they are joined and, in a sense, one unit that we understand them to be. Number 3, all of these muscles that we've talked about, they cross fibre as I describe them. So you've got rectus abdominis going straight up and down, you've got obliques coming in diagonally, you've got spinal erectors going straight up and down, you've got transverse abdominis going around. So you've got all these different fibres going in all these different directions. Now what happens when we brace the abdominals? These fibres that cross over link together to create one solid unit. And that one solid unit I most liken to carbon fibre, where you've got lots of fibres going in different directions and it's a very strong, very flexible material. And that is essentially what our core is for our body. And then number 4, all of these fibres, all of these muscles, all of the fascia, all of the tendons, they all link together and knit together. So the exercises that we choose need to follow these 4 components. They need to use the core as one unit. They need to include all the muscle, or as many muscles, fascia and tendons as we can. We need to use them and knit them together, and obviously it has to maximise the cross fibres. So we need to use as many of the muscles so the cross fibres can be used and effective. Now the exercises that work against this design and build. Now these are the most common exercises that when I walk into a gym, you will probably see most people doing. Sit-ups, crunches, side bends, twists, back extensions. Why are they poor choice? Why do they go against that 4-component design that I talked about? Because what they're doing, they're using individual muscles to fatigue, and then the assumption is if we complete all those different types of exercises and strengthen all those different muscles, that the whole core knits together and creates a strong core. So unfortunately, as I mentioned, that is a misinformed assumption. So what we have to do is we have to select exercises that create one unit, that use most of the muscles, that knit them all together. So that's what we're going to do in the final part to this tutorial. The exercises that we're going to use to highlight these principles about how we can make a strong core are the plank and the side plank. Now we're going to take them from what I would describe as a beginner level and move it through intermediate and up to an advanced level. Now there are more exercises that can do this. You can use cables, kettlebells, dumbbells, barbells, lots of different exercises, lots of different equipment. But what I want you to get from this is not necessarily the exercise, but the principles that I'm talking about within these exercises. So what we're going to do to start with is start with the plank and the side plank and what's going on there, and then we're going to build on top of it. And this is how I build the How to Build Core Strength and Stability 12-week online program. I take you through these principles using many different exercises. So if we come down and we go into a plank, so very simple, we've all done this before. We come down onto the elbows and we hold this position. We've got a nice straight line going from the ear, the shoulder, down to the hips. If we can get the knees and the ankles involved as well, then great, keep that straight line all the way through, but mainly ear, shoulder, down into the hips, maintaining neutral spine. So what we're doing there is we're bracing the abdominals. So we've got what I describe as the anterior fibers of the core. So they're all involved. I'm not necessarily talking in muscles. I'm talking in anterior fibers. So we come down and we hold this position. So we want to do three things. We want to build the endurance of it, we want to build the strength of it, and we want to build the stability of this part of the core. So we just, depending on how long we can hold it for, which is something you can do in the online program, you can go through an assessment, see how long you're holding a plank, a side plank for, and then you've got that to measure on how you go about building it. Now, once we've got the plank and we've got that position sorted, so we've built up some time in the plank, what we would then do alongside that is we would build the side plank. Now again, this is building the lateral seam of the core. So all the way from the armpit, all the way down to the hip. So you've got glute medius, glute minimus is involved, obliques are involved, QL is involved, lats are involved. So you've got all these different muscles that are involved all the way through the core. So we're not talking necessarily about specific muscles. We're talking about that whole lateral seam going down the side of the body. And obviously that would be one side, and then we do the other side. So it's exactly the same at the beginner level. We're just trying to build time held in the side plank. And we want relative symmetry between right and left side. So if there's a big gulf, so if you're doing say 10 seconds on the right and 30 seconds on the left, we've got a big gulf. If there's 25 seconds on the left and 30 seconds on the right, then there's relative symmetry between the two sides. So that's what we want to try and build first, is the ability to hold the position and relative symmetry between left and right. So again, in the 12-week program, we assess that, we can build that, and then we can retest it as we go through the program. Now, let's assume that we've built that basic endurance. What we're now going to do is we're now going to start knitting the anterior and the lateral together. Now, with exercises, you can do the posterior with the bird dog and the bridge. We're not focusing on that at the moment. We're just focusing on these two exercises. But again, as I mentioned, these principles, they expand out into many different exercises. So what we're now going to do is we're going to add some strength and some stability in there. And we're going to add going from anterior out into lateral, anterior out into lateral. So what we do is we come down into the plank, and then very simply, we just add an arm raise in. And then we go down, and then we lift up the other side, and then we go down. So how is that a progression? Well, number one, we're lifting a limb, and it's going to be harder anyway. How is that knitting the anterior and the lateral together? Well, when we lift the arm up, as soon as I lift that arm up, the tension and the load moves more from the center and will go to the side, so it will be sort of this 3/4 of the core. So it would be the lateral side and the anterior parts of the core. When I bring the arm down, it will move back into the anterior part, and as I lift the other arm up, it will shift to the other side. So what we're starting to do is we're starting to use multiple muscles, so more muscles, and we're starting to shift the load throughout the core by lifting the arm up. So it's a very simple type of exercise to do, but a very effective way of using those four components to their maximum. So what we're now going to do is we're going to take that on to another level. We're going to add another layer to it. So we've got the plank, we've built the endurance. With lifting the arm, we've started to build an extra bit of strength for the very simple reason we've got to brace harder to hold that position, and we've got the stability because we want to also keep the hips centered. When we keep the hips centered, glute medius, glute minimus have got to work, hip flexors have got to work as well. So we're starting again to use much more of the core. So the final part to this is taking it up again to another level, including more muscles. So what we're now going to do is we're going to go from that plank and take it up into a side plank. So we come down, we come into this position, I lift up. I don't want these hips to move so I can feel the muscles working. What I then do is I roll round. So what I've now done is I've then taken it to another extreme. So I've gone from anterior in the plank, I've lifted and gone round to the side a little bit. Now I'm right on the side. So I would hold here, then I would roll back over. So I've gone from, as I'm here, I'm on this side with this tension. As I roll back over, I come back to the anterior and this side. I then put it down, I lift up the other side, and I come around. So what you'll notice I'm doing is now I'm down on this underside, I roll round, I'm anterior and on the right side, and then down, and then I go again. So all the way, what I'm doing is I'm shifting the load throughout the torso. What this is doing is moving the tension throughout the torso, which is then knitting these fibers together. And that's the main principle with the core exercises, is certainly on a beginner's level, we need to start simple. So we would use the plank, use the side plank, use the bridge, use the bird dog, build up the 4 parts of the core that we need to build up: the anterior, the lateral, the posterior. What we then do is start adding in, i.e. the different movements that we've done to shift the load. Now we've gone from left to right. We can go up and down. We can go across. So we need to use these dynamic movements within our exercise to be able to take the core from that beginner's level, which is just holding the plank and holding the side plank, and moving it up into more intermediate and advanced. And as I've mentioned, this is the type of progress that we make through the online 12-week program. So we start off by just building endurance, strength, stability around the core. Then once we get through the 12-week program, we can then move into the intermediate and advanced workouts, where we start using body weight, we start using equipment, so bands, balls, kettlebells, dumbbells. We start using those to branch out and use more exercises to challenge the core in new ways, top to bottom, left to right, anterior to lateral, diagonally across the core. So we're trying to build that dynamic nature to the core. Because when we go about everyday movement, when we go about sports and performance, that's how the core's working. It's not working in sit-ups, in side bends, in twists. It's not doing that. That's one thing we've got to get away from in exercise and in fitness. And we've got to move towards holding, bracing, moving stress around the torso and load around the torso, and then moving from the hips and moving from the shoulders. Many thanks for watching this tutorial. If you found it helpful and you want to build your core strength, stability from a beginner's level up to an advanced level, click the link below, go through to my How to Build Core Strength and Stability 12-week online program, enter your details, and you'll be sent an email and you can get started right away.